Hi, we are ready to have another watercolor lesson, and I am going to make use of the gouache in this lesson. So yes, let's get into it and see what is going on today. I've got a picture of a mountain stream with rocks in it, and the water is flowing through around the rocks. The rocks are kind of wet. This is interesting where it looks simple. It's not quite as simple as it looks when you actually do it, but if you have a few tips about how some things are working, then it should not be too hard. So first, and you're probably wondering why I drew this over here on the side. I'm going to explain that in a minute. And I am starting out with a picture that is black and white to show it to you without the color, and that way we can just focus on what's happening with the lighting and what is happening with the composition first. And then I'll reveal the color photo, which of course you will have in front of you as well. So as we're looking at this picture, I think the composition is fairly easy and straightforward. It's basically just, oh look it, here's the stream, it guides our eye back to here. Ta-da, right? Okay, so you have a jagged line going in this side and a jagged line going in this side. So even though the line is not straight, it's kind of jagged, it guides our eye back in to the picture. Then you've got a couple of lines coming down from the hills on either side, and that also helps to point our eyes here back in space. If you had a little person here standing on the end, then it would be like, oh look, there's a little person. Or maybe if you had a deer drinking from the water, I don't know, hopefully they don't fall in. No, just kidding. Anyway, or a bear, something like that would be really great, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to stick with the landscape as we see it. Okay, so that's composition, and then let's look at the idea of rocks in this picture. So the rocks, they're jagged, they're all different shapes. It might be a little confusing, but here's a tip I have. Think of it as if it was boxes. Boxes. But instead of it being just a regular box, right? This looks like, oh, look at, square. I've got the sides of my box. Great. But what if it was like you got a package in the mail and it got beat up? Oh no! It got beat up a bit on the different sides, and so it's a bit misshapen, but then you still have the different sides, right? The top of the box, left and right, top of the box, left and right, but now it's a rock, and it looks like a rock that you could put into the stream. That's based on the one that's right here. You could see that in the picture and compare. Oh yeah, I see it. Okay, and then I did another one because it's like, oh, well, they're at different angles, right? So here's one, and then here's another one. I have a box, top, left, I'm sorry, right side, front side, right, top, and two sides there. Okay, but oh no, it got a little smashed on the top again. Okay, box got smashed, and but it still is working. The light and dark areas are working there. And all you have to do basically is figure out where, what shape it's in, right? The top and the sides, and then where is the lighting. And then if all of the lighting is at the same angle, you get it. It's a snap. Okay. So anyway, when you look at the photograph, notice how the front of the rocks, the top of the rocks is lit. It's the front of the rocks, the front sides of the rocks that are more towards us. That's where the dark is. You can see it on this rock over here on the side. You can see it on the rock here. You can see it on this group of rocks. So the edge that's right down by the water, that's where the shadow, the darkest part of the rock is. And then if you just keep that in mind, lighting direction, that's most of what you're going to need to sort out. It doesn't, the rocks don't even have to be the same shape as the rocks you see in the picture. It could be all different kinds of lumpy stuff, but as long as the light and shadow areas stay in the same areas, right? So like if the light is on the left, then the shadow's on the right. Or if the light is on the top and then the shadow is in the front, like in this case, then it will all work out and make sense, even if it's not the same shapes as you see in the picture. Okay, so that's the tip about rocks. And let's go ahead and get started with drawing it in. Notice the light and dark areas, of course, too, right? So the lightest area is going to be on the water and the sky. You've got a lot of medium and dark on your hills and on the rocks. Okay, putting away the black and white. Now you can see the color one, which is smaller, off to the side. And you can see the palette today. So instead of showing myself, I'm going to show my palette. And this might be a little bit easier to see. But I know that all these colors look kind of dark in here when they're dry. But when it's mixed, maybe you'll see it easier. We'll find out as we are going along. Okay. So the basics of this image. First, it's the angles going up. And I know that this paper is now at a bit of an angle, but I think you can still see it and see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to lightly draw it like this. Like, okay, where are we going to? We're going to about here. Here, that's where I'm aiming for. But I'm doing this very lightly because I'm going to erase that, right? It's bigger in the front and smaller in the back, just like a road would be. But it's not going to be just a straight angle going in to this point. It's kind of zigzaggy. So look and see where the zigs and zags are. You could start from this and go out to here, or you can start from this side and go that way. You could kind of meet in the middle, whatever works to get the angles on there. So look and see which direction the stream is going in. Okay. Okay, and I'm drawing this in a bit darker, but I will erase up a lot of that so that it doesn't show too much in our final image. Okay. Kind of coming out pointy like this. It looks like a lightning bolt now. I recommend looking carefully at the picture for this part, because if you get this part set correctly, that will set you up for success in making things look three-dimensional. So as I'm looking at it, I see it's coming out a little bit, then down just a tiny bit. I think that has an even sharper angle on there. I would like it to be a bit closer to, I'm thinking here. Yeah, I'm going to widen that. Coming over. Okay, and that part, it almost even looks like it comes slightly in, but it's mostly down. Yeah, and I might be coming down a little too far. I'm going to go like that. But even if this is not exact, it still works as long as you think about where the light and dark areas go in regards to the zigzags. I know when you're looking at this, it's a bit tricky to see where the light is coming from. It's an overcast day, which disperses the light a bit more, but you can still see that with the rocks, the top is lit, the front is the shadow, and then think the same thing when you're doing the trees on the side or the bushes. I'm actually not going to put you might have noticed it already, I'm actually not going to put all of those tree sticks, the dead trees in there. I'm going to edit that out because it is not the focus of what we are doing. I'm going to stick mainly with the focus on rocks and water, but still making sure that I've got some ground on either side and in the back. Okay, so I was just adjusting over here, making sure that I've got everything in the right place, and now I'm going to check on this side, thinking, where's the angle going? I'm like, it comes out a bit more over on this side, and then it comes back over in. But not that far, not as far in as I had it. Like not all the way into the middle, it looks like. So I'm trying not to get it all the way back to the middle. Okay. Adding another zigzaggy piece in there and then flattening that part out a little bit more. Okay. I think we can go with that. There's the water. And even if yours does not look exactly like the picture, it won't really matter because a mountain stream, it's going to zig and zag in different ways, and nobody will say, hey, that is not the correct mountain stream. I know that stream and it doesn't look like that. Right? It's if we get a person's face wrong, then people start going, hey, that's weird. Why is one eye higher than the other one? But here, nobody's going to say, hey, why is that rock in the wrong place? Okay, now I'm going to add a few lines coming from this part here, out and up. I have actually the proportion here might be a little bit different than the proportion on the photograph, so some of this might get a little stretched in different ways. Okay, and I know the trees are hiding this part, so I'm kind of making it up a bit. I think it might actually work too. This might be interesting. I'm going to overlap a bit, and I'm going to end up here. Maybe that'll make it look like the stream is going to turn around the corner. which could be quite interesting. And then, right, because it's like, oh, it's going to go around the bend. But that may not show up too much in the end. Okay, and then that mountain in the back, which is also partially obscured by trees. So we're just taking a guess here of what it really looks like. Okay, and then one other thing I'm going to draw on here is some rocks or clumps of rocks. Notice how the ones in the front are bigger and the ones going into the distance get smaller and smaller. So that is our perspective coming into play, that we see bigger in the foreground and smaller and smaller. So let me start over here. I'll make this rock kind of a diamond shape. That was this one. Okay, and over on this side, that's actually, part of that's actually a rock. Couple more coming down, but I'm not going to do every last rock. Oh, also, notice how there's a tree limb across the water? I'm totally going to ignore that too, because it doesn't fit nicely into the composition. So edit, it's gone. It looks like stepping stones. Could make my way up there. So these ones in the front have a little bit more space in between them because we're looking more down on them. And then up here in the middle, it gets clumpy. It looks like a clump in this area and this area here. But I'm going to give that clump of rock some more jagged edges, the way that rocks would have more jagged edges. Okay, and a couple way back here in the stream for in the distance. Since I don't want my edges to be really hard, oh, this is actually also a rock over here that's part of this sticking out. But since I don't want to have really hard edges on here, I'm going to go around and erase up a lot of this. Just touch it. I found the old kneaded erasers that I was using in the in-person class. This one is still in good shape, but I've got one here that's really hard. So they can do that after a while. I will go from light to dark painting this time, as I should, instead of the other way around. That way it'll make it easier for us to save the light areas and then darken as we as we need it to get darker. Okay, so that's fairly lightened up. I think you can still see what I've got here. And here is the palette today. I'm going to start off with my big brush. And I will start with that nice light sky. That's just water. But why not? Let's wet our sky with the mop brush. Then I'm going to... the sky in the photograph has been lightened out quite a bit. I'll add a touch more blue in there so that it doesn't look like the sky is just a blank hole. And you're like, what is there up there? Nothing? Great. Next, I will go for the water. Oh no, the water. Okay. Because that's where the tricky part is. But wait, we are going to have gouache in the end to get the white parts of the water. You will see that there's some kind of greenish color in the water, yellowish green over here and over here. So that's what I'm going for. And I'm not going to worry too much about the exact edges of where the color is because I'm going to go back over it with my white gouache. So a yellowy kind of green. I've got okay, it's not super bright though, so I think I will put some yellow ochre. It might actually be better just to start with yellow ochre and then put a little of the blue together with it. I know there's not much color there, but if I need more, I can kind of build. Ooh, yeah, okay, that's not too bad. There's quite a bit of color though. Okay, I don't want it to get too dark. Just a bit of the color. And I don't even have to be that careful going around the rocks because they're gonna darken up. Okay, some up in there too. And I will, let's see, between these rocks, yeah, I'm gonna just extend it out. And it won't really matter if this looks streaky either because it's running water. I'll put some over here. There will be some shadow and light, so that will help to put the shadow underneath the light area. And some parts down here it looks a little bit blue. I'll just grab that blue. And put it down there. Okay. And I think that over here I will even darken some of that water a bit more too. Ah! Okay, I also see just a touch of that blue where it's foaming up like a blue-gray, like a tiny bit of shadow right there. So I'm going to do that. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it turns out. Okay, now I'm going to work into the trees, the foliage. That is going to be medium. I don't need to start off too light, but I'll give it a nice green. In this photograph, you really can't even see the green being pushed back into a more blue color in the background. I will do a little bit of that just because then it will give it that feeling of atmospherics. But over here and here, I can keep it very bright. More yellow. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay. And it's gonna be all piecey and patchy, so I don't actually need to wet it first, but I'll go ahead and do that. You can see I've got a little of the color on there already. So even though I'm wetting it, it is, there we go. It's already got that in there. Okay, other side. Your sky is probably already dry, so it's all right if you're going over it a little bit too. Okay, so while this is sitting, before I add slightly more blue color back there, well, actually, I don't need to wait because even if it bleeds a little bit, it won't matter because I'm going to be covering it with the darker area anyway. So yeah, why not? Okay, so I'm going to make some of that color, but just with a touch more blue in it. Trying not to get it too blue. See, that's too blue. Let's see where I've got this. I can't really go like that and compare, huh? But I can look here and look there. Yeah, okay. So that looks fine. Oops, I don't have enough water on my brush. I squeezed it out and then I didn't have enough. Okay, yeah, so the color is slightly different, just a little bit. Now I'm going to switch to my medium brush and do the rocks. I'm going to do the lighter part of the rocks, and I'll just cover the whole area of the rocks. Notice where the sunlight is hitting it, the rocks are more yellow, more of that ochre color. So actually I'm going to use a lot of ochre. But I'm not going to make it like a really bright ochre color. If you take a little of your black and tone it down, that should do it. Kind of gray it out. Okay. So rocks. And that might still be a little wet, so I think I will start with these rocks here. And if your rocks have jagged edges, it works. You don't have to worry about making the edges super neat and even. You may not be able to see it, but there are rocks over here as well. And I know I put green in there. I didn't really leave that area as a rock area, but it's in a darker place. I'm gonna put some rock color down in here in this shadow area. Okay, and I need to make sure I'm getting these ones back up here, way in the back, before I forget. And think, do I have any more rocks to add? I'm going to add one right here. Okay, at this point, it looks like the background hill should be ready for me to think about where the shadows are. I notice that the shadows are more on this side of the hill. But I'll go like kind of medium and then into shadow. So keeping it a little bit more blue than I actually see it, I'm going to take blue and some of the yellow ochre. Let's see. I think it needs some of the regular yellow in there to brighten it up too. And that is very thick, so I'll water it down a bit. A little more. Okay, because I don't want to get too dark right away since that is quite light. And it's difficult to see the transition, but I'm going to imagine the transition. I'll start with the areas that I know are dark, and I know that there's little trees and bushes, so if I think a little bit more vertically when I'm putting this on, right? If my brush strokes are not like super long and vertical, but it will be in the ridges here, but also coming up. And a hint is trying to keep the dark area together as one thing, but also keep it kind of jagged, and think, okay, bigger, smaller, medium. Think a bit more over here. Just looking and thinking. Where do I need to add? And I won't need to leave a lot of that area up there as the light area, because that's medium, and so it will get darker, still a little bit darker. Okay, next, these ones, and I want it to be a bit more yellow, not quite as blue, so I'll add a bit more of that bright yellow to it to warm it up. Bring it forward, but not too thick, more watery, a little watery there. Okay. Okay, and now notice where the darker areas are, right on the edges here. And then see, that's the top part of a bush, so that's going to be lighter. But then here, this edge that's towards us, so the edges that go this way out, that are towards us, that are facing towards us, are going to be darker. And then same thing on this side. See the edge here? You can't really see that one, it's far away, right? This one, you could see that. That's darker, it's towards us. And this one. But see where it's coming up? Because the bush is here, that is a bit lighter. It's still not like super light though, so I can use the medium on there and then maybe not just not have so much dark like right there. Okay. And of course adjust as you go along. Now I had added this piece of, as if it's turning around a corner, so I'm going to put that in. And then part of this is just my imagination. It's not actually there. Some of it's not there in the photograph, but you can see this area coming up like that, right? You can see all of that area coming up. And I will make it kind of jagged. That whole area, it's all covered with all those trees that are spiking up, but I'm ignoring that. And I want to leave the top edge of it lighter, even though I see that gray and black from those trees. Okay, so I said that was going to be lighter, but then this front side here, and those are some rocks, so I will actually use a different dark color on the rocks. But all this, and it comes up this side. But I will make it jagged. And then that'll just look like, oh, it's turning, and then it's turning, and then it's turning as it goes back in space. Okay, other side. Here. And I can imagine as if this is a ridge. Kind of a jagged ridge coming up. And then the top edge of it, the very top edge, is staying lighter. Okay, next one. Skip the area that will be kind of lighter. I know it doesn't actually look like that in the picture. I'll make that kind of patchy on that edge so it's not sharp. That'll soften up this edge too, right? Not have it as sharp. Okay, now see this, where I'm making it up, it starts to look too even. Like, oh, it's just one one even strip. Oh, well, I can make part of it skinny and maybe make one more part of it skinny, and then it won't have that same feeling of like, oh, everything is evened out. Okay, and then one more up here. Notice all this area is going to end up dark. So that comes up almost all the way to here. It'll come up pretty high. Okay. Now, as it's drying, I can see that difference for the hill that's way in the back. And I'm ready to do another layer so that we get the rest of the foliage. Okay, so once again, I'm going to mix something for the darker area, but I don't want it to actually be too dark. It'll be more watery. I'll use the darker blue this time for that back hill and the yellow ochre so that it's not totally blue, but it's kind of a darker blue-y color with maybe a hint of green in it. Okay, let's see. Yeah, that's dry enough. I can do that. So once again, I will go for that bottom edge. If I want to break up that edge a little bit too, that works. Might help it to look more natural if I break that edge so it's not just straight. Okay, and then I'm going to come up from there, but just not all the way to the top of the medium. I'm going to go for that. I didn't like that hole. I was like, nah, I'm just going to cover it. Okay, especially the spots where you already have more of that medium color in a bigger clump, then think, oh, okay, I guess I need a bit of the dark in that area. Okay, that looks, I don't know, that looks like too much of a line to me still right here. So I'm going to see about making this side of it, this side of the line a little bit bigger, and then maybe if I put a few more pieces here, then it doesn't look like one thin line going down as much. Break this up. Okay, yeah, a bit more like that. That's more than you can actually see in the photograph, right? But it's fun. Okay, next. Coming forward, I'm going to mix a color for the dark area. I might have to go over that dark area a couple of times. This is still actually fairly wet, but it's not coming up. I may have to darken it a couple of times. So I'm going to go with the lighter blue and the yellow, and then I think I'll probably go one more layer over that with some brown in the mix as well. But I'll just stick with a more green color to help it transition first. Okay, yeah, that looks good. darker green. Okay, so same thing right at the edge of where the bottom is going to be. And then, oh, I have a little much on my brush for this back area. Pull it up into whatever is the front of the bottom area here. Okay, and I can make it a little bit jagged here where it touches the water as well, because it is. And then it won't feel as much like, oh, there's, it's not natural if you make it just a smidge jagged, like some of the leaves are coming over the water. Okay, and so like this is the front of the dark area here, so same thing, right? I follow that, and it's going to come up from here. But I don't have to cover all of that. I can leave it a little patchy in places and then leave some of those medium colors there. Yeah, I think that works. And then in the front, thinking about where the bushes are covering the rocks in the front area here, and I will add more dark into that. Okay, and then coming up, leaving a few patches. All right, that will work. I think I will help if I just kind of break up that line a bit more so it's not as even in the front. So I have like bigger lumps in the front, smaller lumps in the back. That's another thing about illusion of space, going back in space. Okay, other side, bottom of where the dark area is going to be, and pulling it up through there. Again. Okay, so this one, this bottom edge looks a little stiff and straight. I'm going to break it up a little bit with a couple of random-ish brush strokes. Okay, and then this is the nearer bottom edge of this area, and then I bring it up. Okay, I wonder if you feel like you're going to be really good at trees at the end of this. I don't know. Okay. I think, yeah, just a bit, breaking it up just a little. That edge, that line. Okay, and then on most of this is, I'm running out of my color. Make more, make more. Most of this is going to be dark. and instead of medium, most of that is dark up in the front. So I don't need to leave too many pieces of the medium in that area showing through. Okay, good. It is starting to look 3D. I will want to take another pass at these ones in the front, but this is good. This is done in the back here. So as I'm going back over to this side to take another darkening pass at it, I will use some brown in the color to really darken up the really dark areas that I want to be darker. And keep some of that blue and yellow. So it'll really look like a brownish color here, and not too much water. But if you end up with more water in it and then you need to pull it back some, that's okay. I mean not pull it back some. If you end up with too much water in there and then you let it dry and add another layer, it still is fine. Okay, so here I go. Just looking for that bottom edge again, but I will kind of leave it a bit more patchy this time for some of those darker areas there. Big lump of dark in this area, and I can see that I'm still a bit wet in the color, so it's spreading a little bit, but that doesn't matter. It can do that a bit. It's fine. Okay, you know what I'm thinking is, once this dries, see that? That's so pale. It looks as light as the sky, but I am going to want that to be not so pale. So later, I think after I do some work on the rocks, I'm going to need to add some more green into these lighter areas. Even up here, look at that. See, it's as pale as the sky. It's like, what? No, I don't want it that pale. There's a clump of dark area there too. And actually way over here. This is all, actually it's fairly dark if I look carefully. So I'm going to bring some more of that dark area up. Since I am going to add more color into the light anyway, it won't have such a harsh contrast when I am done. Okay, other side as well. Trying to keep the jagged edge over here by the water. Different directions. It's all going in some different directions. Okay. Still trying to break up that edge right there. Okay, here we go. Darken, darken. Darken in. Okay. ready for some dark areas on the rocks. I will use some black and brown. And like I said, as long as I'm thinking about where the dark area is, it's the part that's furthest down, that's closest to me on each rock, that's going to be darker. You could see this rock here, it looks all super dark because of the angle of the rock. It's like, oh, that whole edge is dark. I'm actually going to leave a little bit of light on the top of that rock too, because I think it will make more sense together with the rest of the picture. Okay, it's very dark. Very dark. If I don't get it dark enough in the first pass, I can go over it again. Okay, it might even help if I paint a little bit over the tape to get an idea. Oh, that's very dark. That's very dark, huh? And I don't think I like that hard edge on it either, so I'm gonna wash out my brush, use just a bit of water and soften the edge. Better. Okay, so all this front part of the rock is dark, but I am going to leave a little on the top here. And see that? I'm actually just making up that edge. It's not exactly what it looks like. A bit of water. I'm going to soften that one as well. Okay, it's spreading a little more than I wanted. There. There we go. I'll leave a little bit. Here we go. Next one. Oh, my box got smashed in the mail. Oh, okay. Like that. Tiny bit of water, softening that edge. It's another separate rock there. I think I'm going to use a different brush for softening the edge, my little tiny one, because then otherwise I have to keep washing out this brush, and it might be taking me longer and wasting my color. There, yeah, see, that's easier. Okay, so I'll just switch back and forth. Here, this one, front edge is dark. Add a little bit of something there. And you don't actually need to soften all the edges of the rocks. If you don't want to, you can leave some a little bit sharper. That can look natural as well. Front of the rock. Okay, so these up here are clumps of rocks. If it's too tricky and you're like, no, this is not going to work, you can pretend it's just one big rock, right? And just do the front. But if you want to break it up into smaller ones, and then each one, right, the front edge of it is what's darker, you can do that. So I'm going to look at the picture and then imagine that the front edge of each rock is dark. And then the top is not as the lighter area. Okay. Okay, we're kind of making that part up. Okay. There, see, it looks like a clump of rocks. Notice how the bottom edge is dark. Bottom edge is dark. And then whenever I want to split it up, it's like, okay, if this is a rock, then the rock behind it, that edge that's coming towards me, is dark. So in that way, it works just like the hills, right? It's like dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. So if I have a clump of rock, same thing, right? Dark, light, dark, light. Okay, but like I said, if that's too tricky, just do a rock and then it's one lumpy rock. I think this is not going to soften as much because it's already kind of dry there, but that's okay. It's going back there and it's small, so if I soften it too much, it'll all just kind of blend together anyway. A little rock over here on the side, a clump right the bottom of the rocks. And then if I'm separating it out, then each one, trying to make it kind of uneven. There, kind of, I think. Trying to make it a little bit more uneven. There we go. I think it looks like little lobes of bread. It looks like a brick wall. Okay. Oh, you know what? I know. It just needs a little bit more on that one. Okay. And the more uneven it is, the more that it looks like it's correct. Oh, and oh no, these are being covered up in the back. Tiny, tiny. I'm going to need to use my small brush because now my medium brush isn't really going to do it. Just a bit of dark on the front of these rocks way in the back. And it's almost going to be too dark for those ones in the back because they're going back in space. So I just touched it a bit. Okay. Here we are. Next, I said I was going to darken some of these trees. The foliage is getting too light. So I need another layer over the, wrong brush, medium brush. I need another layer over it. Not that, well, actually this one too. That needs to be darkened a bit. Here we go. But I'm going to keep it a little bit more blue back there. Trying to mix a color that's got some bit of yellow in it. Okay. And I don't want to be too heavy with it, so, oh, that's still too heavy. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so there's water in there. It is actually going to dry lighter than what you're seeing. Yep. Okay, so I'll wait for that to dry up, and it should be fine here. I want to keep that a bit more yellow. This might have too much of the yellow ochre in it, so I'm going to remix that yellow and blue. And brush it right over all of my light areas. Okay, that's going to be better. Now I can see a distinct difference between the sky and the ground. And in fact, it almost looks even a little too light in some of those medium areas to me. So I'm going to go in there and put just a bit more. And I know I'm doing this wet into wet, so actually it's going to blend a bit. You don't have to do it wet into wet, but I think it should be fine if you do it that way. To make sure it's darker. Oh, guess what? I forgot to add the dark area over here. Better do that. Dark area of these rocks. That was black and brown. Okay, so all of that is a dark rock area. Okay, so now as we're looking at this, to me it looks like the dark areas on some of these rocks is not really even dark enough. It really could get darker. That means I'm going to go over some of these dark areas here and make them even darker. And then that I'll also add a bit more to it because this is really in the shadow and it should be quite dark. And you're probably wondering how the water is going to come out in the end with the gouache. We shall see. Trying to get enough contrast so that the water will stand out. Okay, if the dark area of the rocks dries too light, again, I can always add another layer. I'm just softening some of these edges here with my tiny brush. And as I go way back into the distance, see, I had taken some off, but I think I'm going to add some of that back on. So it really does dry quite a bit lighter than I thought it would. You know, some of the light areas of the rocks look a bit light too. Because notice how this looks like it's just a bit darker than the sky. But if I really look at the black and white version, that should definitely be darker than the sky. So if I do another coat of some of that yellow ochre with gray, on some of these areas, it's a challenge, right? How light or how dark. Does it need to be? Getting there. See, I had dabbed it off, but I'm like, nope, it actually needs it. Okay. And then I said I was going to darken these rocks over here. Nice and dark. And then I can push some of that dark into the bushes as well on this side. And I can even use it over here. I think that will help, like right by the edge of the water where the shadow is the deepest. Okay, and now some of this water area, it is going to get a bit darker before I add the gouache. We had a kind of a greenish but brownish, right? Yellow ochre, yellow, touch of blue. Interesting color. It needs more in there. And I'm leaving it kind of brushy. I think that will work. I'm looking for the areas where the water is kind of like splashing around, and I'm adding some more of that dark. Now notice over here in the shadow, see, I didn't really add the rocks over there, but I do need to add some dark to the water in this area on this side of the rocks in the shadow. And then I've got a few splashes over here too. Okay. It actually almost looks like the water, just like that, when I put those splashes on. Time for gouache. Yes, I think we are ready. It's time for the gouache. Okay. Since this is white and the palette is white, it may be difficult to see. I'm just going to put a little out. Yeah, you really can't hardly see that at all. Let me see here. There. Okay, I'm just going to put a little bit out, knowing that I am going to have to clean all of that off of the palette at the end to make sure I don't leave a hard lump there. It's different than the watercolor, and I want to make sure that I'm cleaning it up at the end and not leaving something there. I think I will go from back here forward. Anywhere that you have color that you don't want to have too much of that color showing up, that's what you're going to cover up. See how I didn't really leave that white area right here above the rocks? So I'm going to put that back in with a bit of gouache. Just like that. Everywhere that's dark, but then I don't want it to be dark anymore, I just touch it like that. Okay, I'll make that edge a little bit more jagged there. Okay, so coming forward, the parts that I see on the water, if it's already white, it's fine. I can just leave it like that. I don't need to use any gouache on it. But say over here, see how I had darkened it? But then what I'm doing is I want it to be, I want it to be the water flowing over that, but I just thought it's easier if I put a kind of a block piece of the color that's going to be underneath, and then I look carefully at the picture and see how the water is flowing over the different rocks and how it's like splashing, right? Like maybe some dots for that it's splashing, or some lines for where it's flowing. You're going to see that as it's coming over the top of some rocks, those areas are white, and then as it's coming down, like it's splashing down, and then it's making either some streaks or some dots. And have fun with that. And then if you end up covering up too much of that area and you're like, oh, that's not right, you can wait for the gouache to dry and add a bit more color over the top. Okay, then over here, there the water is splashing down. Water is splashing down this way. Splashing down this way. But it's all bubbly, so I'll use some lines and some splashy dots, and then it kind of covers up a lot of that area, but you get just a hint of what it's like. Here, let me get in closer. Okay, here you can see I'm closer to it. I notice that if I go like that, the camera kind of whites it out. And I'm not sure, I might be able to switch it to the other camera. Give me a second. Okay, I'm not sure if that really comes out any better. And I think this camera maybe has trouble focusing if it's that close. But you kind of get an idea of what I'm doing down in here. So I'll leave it a little closer up. Okay, so now looking down here, I'm going to think about the water coming down and splashing. Over here, it's a lot more splashy and more white. Over here, it just kind of splashes around a couple of the rocks, and it's not moving quite as much. Okay, so here on this side, it's coming around this rock. And the more you thin this down with water, the more it will dry light in the end, and it won't white it out as much. Okay, kind of splashing around over here a bit. Pieces, edges. A little bit of a splash over here. Okay, and then a lot of this, see, I had added the color lightly, and so we will put a bunch of the white wherever we see those splashes happening. Okay, around the rock. I'm going to stick with this side over here first, so let me go around on this rock. The top has some splashes, the bottom, this side particularly, and it's going around this one. I feel like I'm using whiteout. Let's fix all of our mistakes with whiteout. Oh. Splashing up, there was a rock there. I didn't put it in though. Okay, I'll just put a few more splashes over there. Okay, and then I'll move from this side coming down. Here, the water from this area is a little bit more flat, so I'm going to go more flat in the strokes coming across. Splashy, 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 but more horizontal. Okay, splashing over here on the bottom of that rock. And then you can see where the branch is crossing. That's where it kind of turns and it comes down more, right? So the splashes are going to be more vertical through this area here. And trying not to make it stripy, right? So some of the splashes can stick together, and they can even kind of curve a bit and get round. Okay, I might have been overly cautious in squeezing out the gouache. So if I run out, I will just have to get a bit more. Couple of splashes going that way, but that's darker. I may need to even add a little bit more. Oh, sorry. Keep the camera on there. Yep, okay. Yeah, so I may even need to darken that area in a little bit. Okay, so it comes down, sploosh, and then it gets kind of foamy in here and more flat and foamy again. Right at that bottom edge. So yeah, the camera does pick it up, I think, fairly well. What I'm doing. you don't end up seeing it a lot. You just see it a little bit, and so it'll create that sense of the water is moving. See how I've got that edge here looks too hard. I just need to go in with more of that, break it up with my splashing water. There. No hard edge there. Okay, that's better. And anywhere else, if I see the edge of the dark area looks too hard, then I can fix it. Like here, that looks too hard. I know I edited out some of the rocks, which is like, oh, well then, what am I going to do? So I'll just kind of break it up a bit more. Okay, and then I will go in with my tiny detail brush and add a bit more. See over here in the shadows, just needs a bit more. In the shadow area. Some pieces on the water here, and maybe a few pieces in through where my water is splashing to give it more of that three-dimensional feeling of the movement of the water. Okay, and I think a bit more on this side would do as well, so that doesn't look as flat. It's more calm, so I will use lines that are not as vertical, a little bit more horizontal. To break that up. Yeah. So a bit tricky, right? But the gouache is what can make it work better. Here is the final piece. I know that's making it look like it's really whited out, but I notice if I just kind of trick the camera a bit, you can see that it's not really, the water is not really as light as it appears. It actually has a lot more in there, and then you'll see it in the final photograph as well. We'll zoom in again on the water. Yep, and over here. There we go. Yeah, I think that about does it, because my rocks and my trees are definitely darker than the sky and the water. So the dark and light contrast and then this V shape going in is what helps to make it. And then I hope you had fun making some interesting textures in the water. Give it a try and see how it goes.